One of the first things you should do before you even start making your wheel is just double check your car to get some dimensions, but also to make sure that it's going to fit on the track. So to do that, I like to take the offset tool and grab the edge of the axle hole and just offset it inside the wheel well to make sure that there'll be enough room. I like to leave around 1 to 2 millimeters around the outer edge of the wheel. So basically I'm just putting in place here a wheel just to measure to see if it'll fit. So if you go too close, it won't spin very well inside that wheel well, because if it bumps into any little bit of plastic on the inside there, it can kind of act as brakes. So I like to leave around 1 to 2 millimeters. And then what you really need to check is the distance from the base of the car down to the bottom of the tire. So if I measure from here down to here, you can see I'm at 10.2 millimeters. There's going to be a 1/4 inch rail underneath the car that comes out to 6.35 millimeters. So you want to have at least 7, but I'd probably recommend more like 8 or 9, or in this case even 10 millimeters, just to make sure that your car doesn't touch that rail as it rolls down the track. So I can see here it's going to be plenty of clearance. Then you want to take a measurement to see the diameter of your wheel. So I'm going to go from one endpoint through the center of the axle hole over to the other one, and I get a number of 25.7 millimeters. So that could be the size of my wheel when I go to actually start designing. Again, you want to make sure that you're leaving around 1 to 2 millimeters. Right now I've got 2.1 millimeters between your wheel and your wheel well, to make sure that there's plenty of clearance for the wheel to spin in that opening. So one more time, I forgot my number. I was 25.7. The other measurement that you'll take very quickly is the depth, and you're going to measure the depth of your wheel well, so from the car outward, and I've got 7 millimeters, so I'll make my wheel 7 millimeters wide. So once you have those two measurements, you can begin designing your wheel. I believe in my tutorial I actually have you working on it next to the car, but it's probably actually best just to open up a new file. That way you can design from the origin of the axes, and that'll make it a little bit easier as you're working. So you'll grab the circle tool, and before you actually start drawing a circle, you want to change the number of sides. If we just do a 24-sided wheel, you can actually see the edges are pretty jagged, and that won't roll smoothly down the track. So instead, you may have to get off of the tool and select it again. You can just type in the number. You don't have to click in here. Just type in the number 200, and that's going to increase the number of sides a lot. You actually have to enter to save that or select it. And now as I draw my circle, you don't see those edges at all. So we've got a circle with 200 sides instead of just 24. That'll be much smoother as we're rolling. So my wheel was supposed to be 25.7. So as I'm drawing, let's zoom in here a little bit more. It's giving me a radius. So if I want a wheel of 25, I'll round up to 26 millimeters, that means my radius would be 13. So you're going to need to keep that in mind as you're drawing. And now I've got a wheel that has a diameter of 26. If we double check here from one side across, we're at 26 millimeters. The other measurement that we took from the car was the height of the wheel, or the depth of the wheel well opening, and that was 7 millimeters. So I'll push this up to 7 millimeters, and that would be a very, very basic wheel. Again, the nice thing about working on the origin, if I need to find the center again, it may not work on the top side, but if you orbit underneath the origin of the axes, you can always snap back to that as the center of your wheel. So the next thing you'll need is your axle opening, and the size of that's going to depend on what you're going to use to attach your wheel to the car. I've been using 3.2 as a diameter, so that'd be 1.6 for a radius for some of the screws that I've been using. So I'll make a radius of 1.6, and then I can push that through to the top. just like putting the axle holes in the car, if you go too far through, you can always just push that back down. And you want it to say on face, and then when you let go, it's going to actually open up all the way through. And so that's it. That's a very simple wheel. That would get us practically 0 points for the wheel design section. It says it should be detailed and realistic and have different dimensions, and right now we have just basically a cylinder with a hole in it. It's also not going to roll great. You're going to have a large surface area that rubs against your car, and you've got a large surface area that's going to be rolling on the track. So to improve this, there's a few different things that we'll work on in the next couple of tutorials.